Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. So we left off getting the engine pulled out of this truck. I've got the engine bay pretty much prepped and ready to go. I want to do a little touch up where the frame coating has come off before I sit the engine back in here, but otherwise it's pressure washed out, it's all cleaned up. I've got this is the driver's side bracket for the V8 two-wheel drive, and this one is GM part number 15113848. It's for a 99 to 07 classic two-wheel drive that came with either a 4.8 or a 5.3. The 6-liter will fit also. The motor mounts are the same. So that's all prepped and ready to go. Now I need to work on finishing getting the actual engine and transmission prepped and ready to sit back in there. So I've got the V6 here, and here's my L33 that's going in. I need to transfer a couple components over. The largest one is the power steering pump. Depending on where your swap engine came out of, you may or may not need to do this, but the two-wheel drive trucks use a different power steering pump than the four-wheel drive trucks. And the reason behind that is two-wheel drive trucks use a rack and pinion steering design, and the four-wheel drive trucks use a push-pull with a center link steering design with a steering gearbox. The rack and pinion design uses a pump that outputs lower pressure, and that's important because the higher pressure pump from the four-wheel drive trucks, it does make enough pressure that it can blow the seals out of your rack and pinion, which rack and pinions aren't cheap. So it may not, you may be just fine with a four-wheel drive pump, but to me, I've got both of them out. It's not worth the risk. It won't take me long to just swap the power steering pump from the V6 onto the V8. Once I have that moved over, then it's pretty much get the transmission bolted back to the engine. I do want to weigh the L33 before I bolt the transmission back to it. Clean it up a little bit. It's out now so you can get a little bit of a better look, but this engine's really clean. And there's the reman barcode. It's got all new exhaust manifold bolts on it. Still has the little heat tags and the freeze plugs, core plugs. So like I said, I'm pretty confident this is a fairly low mileage engine, probably a very low mileage engine, and it ran great in the truck I took it out of, so it should run really well in this truck I'm putting it into. And yeah, I'm doing a lot of talking and not a lot of working, and I don't have a lot of time today, so I'm going to get started. If you've never done this before, you do need a power steering pump puller to replace these power steering pumps. Unfortunately, the accessory brackets are not the same between the V6 and the V8, so I can't just swap the whole accessory bracket. I'll have to actually remove the power steering pump pulleys on both, then remove the brackets, unbolt the power steering pump from the bracket, swap them over, and then put the V8 back together. The V6 I'll just leave without a power steering pump because I'm probably going to sell it once I get done with this and know I have everything off of it that I need. So yeah, let's get to work. All right, so I got the power steering pump swapped. We've got the two-wheel drive power steering pump put on now, all put back together, ready to go. I took my little stand off so I can hang it. I'm using the same chain and setup that I used to hang the 4.3. I've got the air filter box, the little engine cover on here. And let's see what this thing weighs. And that looks like 509 pounds. So heavier than I thought. But I think I also might have been thinking about the weight of the engine without the accessories. Because, you know, The alternator adds some weight. The power steering pump adds some weight. Water pump, AC compressor, all that stuff adds some poundage on there. And I mean, even still, it is still lighter than the 4.3 was. Do I remember correctly that the 4.3 was 530 pounds? Pretty sure. So this is about 20 pounds, 21 pounds lighter than the 4.3, but now it's also a V8 and it does make more power, more horsepower, and more torque. So I'll take it, you know. 21 pounds less is 21 pounds less. I'm still excited, and again, it's going to be a huge power upgrade. Not to mention, it'll just make it an overall better truck, in my opinion. So, next thing to do is get it all hooked back together with the transmission, get the fuel lines hooked back onto it, the transmission cooler lines hooked back onto it. And sadly, then I'm stuck waiting. I thought of everything except the fact that I didn't have motor mounts for this engine. The V6 and V8 motor mounts are different. So once I get everything bolted back together, then I'm going to be waiting until motor mounts show up. Hopefully they'll get here at a reasonable time today, and I can get this engine poked back into the truck. I guess I could take a little time too and touch up all these spots where the paint has come off the frame. I can get all that touched up. So yeah, I'll bring you back once the transmission is bolted back on with the torque converter and everything, and hopefully we'll be able to keep moving through this today. Okay, small update here. I forgot for a minute that I wanted to add an oil cooler to this truck. That's part of why I'm using the other radiator, to add the oil cooler. So I have an oil cooler from a 2500 HD that I parted out, that the customer didn't want the oil cooler on it. They just wanted the bypass plate. So now with the oil cooler here, I'm at 511 pounds. So an extra, what, 2 pounds or so? And this engine does have the oil in it also, like the V6 did. So 19 pounds lighter than the 4.3. Still some weight savings and power increase, so still happy about it. I'm gonna get the transmission bolted onto it. All right, team, it's coming together. Got the transmission mounted back on, cleaned up. All the fuel line, evap line, wiring harness, breather, transcooler lines, all routed back just like factory. Neat and tidy. Torque converters bolted up. Pretty much everything. This thing is just about ready to go back in. My mistake of forgetting new motor mounts, new engine mounts, is now annoying, because if I had those, I could go ahead and slip it back in. But since I don't, I want to try to make good use of my time, so I'm gonna touch up all the little places where the coating is peeled off the frame and get this tidied up just a little bit more. Hopefully by the time I'm done that, my motor mounts will be here and I can slip it back in. But otherwise, I might have to start swapping out the pedal assembly. I really wanted to do that in a different video though. So things to note, I had mentioned in the last video when I was pulling it apart, the fuel lines for the two-wheel drive V6, they match right up with the fuel lines for the 5.3. You can see once my chain's not in the way, I'll be able to hook the fuel line right back up on the fuel rail. The evap line is already hooked right back up, all in stock place, stock position, like same. No worries there. Same with the transmission cooler lines, bolts right up. Same with the transmission itself. The 4.3 V6 and the LS engine have the same bell housing bolt pattern, including the 2 bolts that go into the oil pan. The only difference is the 4.3 has a bolt here in this position on the bell housing, but does not have the bolt in the top. The LS has the bolt in the top, but not over here. So you have the same amount of bolts, one is in a different location. The torque converter and flex plate also bolt right up. The 5.3 flex plate for a 4L60 matches right up to the transmission to the 4L60 off of a 4.3. So just bolt it right up, guys. You don't need to buy anything extra. You don't need to do anything special, none of that stuff. The exhaust manifolds. Now again, there's a couple changes throughout the years, but I found one for this donor engine is a compatible year with my truck. So even the exhaust manifolds, the flanges are the same. They'll bolt right back up to the 4.3Y pipe, and I'll be able to bolt it right back to the factory exhaust. And before you come down in the comments and roast me about why did you do headers, why didn't you do exhaust, blah 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 blah. The intention of this, I want to show you how to do this and what all is interchangeable without spending a bunch of money. Like, use as much of the stuff as you already have, save your money. You can use it later for upgrades, performance parts, or whatever else. But if you're trying to do this on a budget, you don't have to buy a ton of stuff, and that's what I'm trying to show here. All right, team, so it's actually the next day now. My motor mounts, new motor mounts, they didn't get here in time to get them bolted to the engine and put in yesterday, so I'm back out here today to get to it. And something didn't quite look right with the passenger side motor mount from the V6, so it got me to thinking, and I tried to fit one of the motor mounts and it didn't fit. And then I remembered the V8 motor mounts, both V8, I'm going to call these the motor mount brackets, but the V8 motor mount brackets, this side and this side, they are different from the V6 motor mount brackets. Now the thing that I was misremembering is all of the V8 motor mount brackets for the passenger side are the same, 99 to 07 Classic. The 2-wheel drive, the 4-wheel drive, all the cab and bed configurations, they all use this same passenger side motor mount bracket. The driver side motor mount bracket is specific. The V8 2-wheel drive one is unique from 99 to 07 Classic, and the V8 4-wheel drive one is unique from 99 to 07 Classic. So if you have a donor truck, if it's a 2-wheel drive donor truck, then you can just steal the motor mount brackets out of that to do this. If you have a 4-wheel drive donor truck, you can use the passenger side motor mount bracket, but you'll need to find the driver side motor mount bracket out of a 2-wheel drive truck. And that's the one I listed the part number for earlier in the series. You can go back and look for that. So now my motor mount brackets are correct. I'm going to get the actual motor mounts themselves bolted to the side of the engine, and then I'll be able to hopefully slip this thing right back down in there where its new home is going to be. And once I do that, then it's get all the other stuff put back together. Get the transmission mount put in, or get the transmission cross member put in, the little cross member under the frame, hook up all the plumbing, blah 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 blah. So I'm gonna get it bolted back into place, and then I'll bring you back with what we're gonna do next.
Later that same evening.
All right, team, it's bolted back in there. Got the motor mounts bolted up on both sides, exhaust hooked back up on both sides. I did connect the wiring on the bottom side, the drive shaft. I did everything under the truck because there's not much, and it's all very straightforward, right? I'm using the same transmission that came out of the truck. So the drive shaft, the electrical connectors, all that stuff is the same. I just put it back together. bolted it in, lined everything up, etc., etc. Again, you know, GM built these trucks with a V6 or a V8, however it was bought, right? So you can use all the factory pieces and it fits like GM put it together. So the exhaust, the V6 wide pipe with the catalytic converters bolts right up. The exhaust flanges are the same on both sides. The spacing between where the Y pipe bolts to the manifolds and then connects up with the tailpipe, it's the same. So I mean, if you have a donor truck and you want to use the V8 Y pipe and catalytic converters, by all means go for it. But again, if you're trying to do this for as little expense as possible, you can use the Y pipe that was original to your truck. Transmission cross member, the same. Now, if you're going to swap your transmission to something different, like a 4L80 or go into manual, then you're going to have to get the correct parts to do that. But since I use the same transmission, since I'm using the same transmission, I didn't need to mess with the cross member. Like I said, I have an 06 engine. This is an 07 classic truck. So electrically, they're the same. So the transmission plugs right in. The range selector switch is the same, plugs right in. Speed sensor location, same, plugs right in. All that stuff very straightforward. And again, this is where it pays to do your research and get the right parts, so the engine and harness that you're putting into the truck matches the rest of the components that are part of the truck, right? What else here? I think that's pretty much it. Everything clears underneath, just like a factory truck would, because again, you could have gotten this truck with a V8 in it. So I think I'm gonna call it for this video there. That's got the engine back in. Next video, which I'm actually gonna start working on it this afternoon as soon as I finish this, but next video is gonna be covering getting everything in the engine compartment hooked back up, right? Because the V6 cooling is different. The V6 air conditioning is different. The V6 power steering was different. I put the V6 power steering onto my engine, so that's actually going to be it's just going to be plug and play. But like I said, that'll be next video. So I hope this one's helpful to you. To my knowledge, this is going to be pretty much the same no matter what year truck you're working on, from 99 to 07 classic. Getting those correct motor mount brackets put onto the frame for your application, the Y pipe, trans cross member, etc. Those are the big things as far as actually fitting the engine back into the truck. So I hope this is helpful, team. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and until the next video, everybody, take care.